Hey, it's Mark with Discography Deep Dives. We're going over our first ever album for our first ever deep dive of Bruce Springsteen. Here we have his first ever album, Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey, released January 5th, 1973. It peaked at number 60. It's been 2 times platinum since. This is a much different album than the rest of his discography. Uh, a key feature of this one is that it does feature many members of the original E Street Band. We can see on the back here, they actually, or the inside, the cover actually here is really interesting. Is it folds out like a postcard uh, with, this is side 2 of the lyrics, and on the back side it starts with side 1, the lyrics. But on the inside it's written like a little postcard. It has all the band members, everyone who played on it. Um, I think an interesting thing right off the bat is Bruce Springsteen plays a lot of instruments on this one. He's credited as playing acoustic, electric, conga, harmonica, bass, and piano on a few songs. Um, so the thing with this album though is he was definitely being positioned as much of a Bob Dylan type. Uh, the story goes that a lot of the producers and the executives really wanted him to be solo, so that was a big fight in the studio of what songs he'd be solo on. And as we go track by track, we'll see that. And in later releases of outtakes, like on tracks, you hear a lot of the demos and the acoustic versions or solo versions, the ones that didn't make it onto the album. So the first song on here is Blinded by the Light, a very famous song, more for the cover by Man for Man and the Earth Band. It did go to number 1. I believe it was actually 3 years later. It's a great song. It's a great introduction into the album. I don't think there could have been a better song in the album to open it. I think the Manfred Mann's version is probably the better version. But this one's fun. The little guitar intro. It's almost iconic. It's unbelievable that it didn't become a hit for him, I think, at the time. But next was Growing Up. And Growing Up is one done with the full band. But on the tracks, outtakes, you actually do hear an acoustic version, which I think is much better. And I think that would have been the better choice for this album if that was the direction they're going in, with pushing him as a solo guy or a Bob Dylan-esque kind of performer. And I do mention the Bob Dylan part a few times because that is heavily influenced in here. His lyrics are just rapid fire, and it's very youthful. I think he's definitely nailed the perspective of a young guy on the streets looking for a good time, or just living in a smaller, moderately sized town, what it was probably like, especially in New Jersey. The next one's probably the first song on the album I wouldn't recommend or I wouldn't include in my playlist of Springsteen. That's Mary Queen of Arkansas. I think that one is probably the most Dylan-esque of any album or folk-like song. It's really just him on acoustic guitar. I just think the song is kind of boring. I think it doesn't really... I don't know. I think maybe Arkansas as a theme or a place for a song isn't very exciting. I think it kind of brings me down a little bit after how good the first 2 tracks are. And I think it does pick up though, and it is a good transition into the next song, which is Does This Bus Stop at 82nd Street? It's just another fun song. It's not amazing, but I think it's a good song. I think it definitely picks the album back up. It's something I do have in my Springsteen playlist myself. Then the next song is Lost in the Flood, which, not a song I have in my Springsteen playlist, but it doesn't mean it's a bad song. I think the thing about that song really is that it's slow and it's a deep song. I think my interpretation of it is about a Vietnam veteran coming back to the rest of the world. I actually wrote a little bit about it in a paper about breaking down the songs of Springsteen, what the deeper meanings or the themes of the songs were. And I think it's good at that, but I think in the sense of listening to music out of enjoyment, I think it's just not one that stands out enough for me to go out of my way to listen to. But on the album, I think it fits in really fine. I think it's just a good album track where if you're listening to it on a record, it doesn't ruin the listen for me. And that's the last song on track, or side one. The second side opens with a song called um, The Angel, and that song I think is another one that's like Mary Queen of Arkansas. It's a solo Springsteen one, and I think that one definitely brings me down a bit. Uh, I don't think it's a good side opener at all. It just doesn't lack that energy, and it's kind of a little sincere, but I just don't think it has the energy of the next song, which is For You. And For You is a great song. I love that one. I think it's possibly my favorite song on the album. Uh, if it was the solo version of Grown Up, that would have been my favorite, but I think For You is very good too. There's a great cover of it also by the Greg Kihn Band, who are famous for doing Jeopardy. That was one of their big hit songs. Their version's a lot more energetic and full, but I think Springsteen's is it has the same feeling. It's just not as electric, I'd say, if that makes sense. Um, I think that's another song that song on this album should have been a hit for him. I think in a way, uh, I don't think people wanted another Dylan like guy, so I think that's probably his biggest struggle with this album. The next song was Spirit in the Night, which I think is a fantastic song. I think that's actually a song he wrote after they said there wasn't a hit on the album. So he actually is credited as playing bass and piano on that song on the inside of the notes. That's another fun song. It's a great song. I think that song, along with the next one, It's Hard to Be a Saint in the City, really make the second side probably the better one, even though it's just for 3 songs. But I think they really hit really well together. And It's Hard to Be a Saint in the City is another great song just because it has that energy and that vibe of the story Springsteen tells in these songs, especially on this album where it's more youthful than I think his later songs that go into being more of a grown up uh, in living your life uh, in a world that's not always fair. I think this one's more about youthful optimism. And It's Hard to Be a Saint in the City is also another interesting one because that's actually one that David Bowie recorded before Springsteen ever really made a big dent in the music industry. Pre Born to Run, he recorded that. His version's okay. It just doesn't really fit David Bowie, I think. But it was good that Bowie saw him as a good songwriter, and it shows that. I mean, even if this album wasn't so successful, it doesn't mean he wasn't good. He was very good. I think he just needed to refine his skills and find out who Bruce Springsteen really was. So overall, for this album, I would say I definitely recommend this. I think it's one, if you can find it at a record store, I'd pick it up. I don't think it's going to be the Springsteen most people are familiar with. I think you'll definitely be, not maybe shocked, but you'll definitely hear how he got from this to Born to Run, Born in the USA. It's just not going to be those kind of things. It's not the big sound of Born to Run. But I think overall, I'd give this album a 6.5 out of 10, maybe a 7. I'm probably going to stay with a 6.5. I think just Mary, Queen of Arkansas, and Angel really kind of interrupt my listening of it, and I think they kind of throw me off a bit, and I think an acoustic version of Grown Up would have been much better. But that's my review for Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey by Bruce Springsteen.